Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Real 50 Over 50. Today we have somebody very special with us, and her name is Nina Froriep. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Excellent. Thank you. And Nina was expert in video and video marketing before it was a thing. For she just told me that tomorrow she's celebrating 26 years in business. So that's way before way
Anything.
before any of this online stuff was
Yeah.
was in existence.
Mhm.
She's a filmmaker turned video marketer and a LinkedIn content strategist, and she helps service-based entrepreneurs create video content to connect, grow, and disrupt. I love the disrupt part, and we're going to do some talking about
True.
that. So, Nina, welcome. And
Thank you.
what would you like to start talking about?
Oh, everything in the kitchen sink.
Mhm.
I mean, 50, real 50 over 50, I think is a great, great, great topic. So here we have
Yeah,
the first question: what happened when you turn
yeah.
50? So my 50 turning 50 is a couple of years ago. So I think a couple of things all happened at once, right? It was everything everywhere all at once. Am I saying that
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
So 50 for me was a real reckoning because I figured like, okay, my business as it wasn't working anymore. I was a small video production company. Budgets that had been, let's say, $50,000 were now all of a sudden, I kid you not, $5,000. And I'm like, I'm not getting out of bed for that.
Mm.
Um, that was sort of the sassy before 50. And I just needed to reinvent myself or just sort of plod along and hope that I was going to make it to, the finish line at 65 or 70 or whatever it's going to be. Right. And I figured, no, at 50, I'm way too young to play for the finish line. Right. So I'm like, okay, reinvention. And this time, I mean, I've pivoted, as you just said, I've been in business for 26 years. I've pivoted with my business many, many times. I mean, there was 9/11. I lost everything I had. There was, the Lehman Brother collapse, as I call it, like the housing crisis. What major pivot happening there. But this pivot I knew was going to be 100% different. And so I set myself a couple of goals. First and foremost, I wanted to be location independent, which seemed a little crazy as a filmmaker who goes to clients' places to shoot, right? And the editing was still happening in person. But I figured I was going to set myself that a goal and figure it out. So that was one thing that happened. And the other thing that happened was like there were dreams that, the things you talk about and you never do. And one of them
Mhm.
was pretty much not immediately at 50, but soon thereafter, I got myself the dog I've been talking about for 20 years.
Yeah.
Um,
Figure.
so, and then there was also sort of a bit of a permission, giving myself permission to not give as much of a, flying, what is it, rat's
Go
ass? Or,
for it. You
yeah,
go for
yeah,
it.
whatever. I don't care anymore. Right? So,
And you also live in two places.
yes. So the location independence gave me, and that is why I wanted that. And back then, my father was still alive, and I knew that, he was getting very old and chain smoker all his life. He wasn't going to last all that long. So having the desire to be location independent was very, very big for me. So now I split my time between the Swiss Alps and New York City. And, I'm anywhere between 50-50 for the last couple of years. This year, it's going to be more in favor of New York, but I have that flexibility now that I am location independent I didn't have before.
Yeah.
And I might add, being a digital nomad is not everything it's made up to be.
No, but it is really a big relief to know that you can be anywhere you want to be.
Yeah, and when my dad did pass 5 years ago, just being there for my mom, for the first couple of years, and we do have a very good relationship. It was just really nice to have that luxury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without the stress of, am I
No.
going to lose my job?
Yeah, I'm not going to lose
You
clients,
know,
etc. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Like when I started my business, my son was 4 and I'm a single mom and
Yeah.
he's about to start school. And I realized I'm not going to know this child.
Yeah.
I'm never going to see him.
Yeah.
And, I quit my job and I started a virtual business in 2006 when They
No
didn't
one.
really exist.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so now we're on the topic of 50. Let's roll right into, Queenagers.
Yes,
I
yes,
know
one of
that
my
you use this word often, and you
yeah.
like to say that we are all Queenagers. What does it mean to you?
So to me, so I came across Queenagers through a friend of mine who turned me on to this woman in England who's actually coined the term, so to speak, and she's actually made a big business out of it. She's a former journalist. Her name is Eleanor Mills, and she has a website called Noon, as in the middle of the day, noon dot something or other UK. And she talks about Queenagers from a couple of different angles. For me, the Queenager conversation is it's not even women about 50 as much as it is a generation X and a generation like boomers
Mhm.
who are in a place where they finally can let go a little bit of that, taking care of everybody. It's always about everybody else. It's about the kids, it's about the husbands, it's about the bosses, it's about the clients, it's about, nurturing, nurturing, nurturing. And now they're at a point where maybe there's a bit of a breather. Kids, there might be empty nesters. The numbers, and I don't have them present, but the numbers are staggering. What the buying power of these women is, it's I think like 80% of all households with women above 50. The women make all the buying, the big buying decisions in the
Yes.
household. They book the travel, all that extra money that can be spent, that is being spent and allocated by a group of people who's actually more or less invisible in advertising, for instance, right?
Yes.
Um, but then the agers, so the teen, there's the queen part, and then there's the ager part, which comes from
Mhm.
teenager. And that is the conversation I really love, which is okay, so what were the dreams? What were the aspirations we had when we were teenagers or in our early 20s that kind of got stifled, got pushed under the carpet? Were never fulfilled on because duty and life called upon us, and I see that with the women I work with, who are creating businesses, be it that they come out of the big resignation or be it that they just wanted to start their own business after a life in corporate, and now are fulfilling on their dream. They're always had this dream to X. And of course that's where the disruptor language comes in as well, right? So what how can we get ourselves into trouble now that we have disposable income, that we have a certain wisdom age,
Mhm.
and also gravitas in our how we can show up and how we can command a room, how we can command a situation, right? So
Comfortable in our skin.
yeah, yeah, and how can we get ourselves into trouble? And I think that's where the ager part comes in, right?
Yeah.
So there's so many aspects to that, of course, right? Yeah.
When this idea came to me, which was on February 17th, I woke up
Mm,
with this as an idea, and
I
it
got
was just like, "Should I do this? Yeah, I'm gonna do this." Like, the second thing I did, which is always the second thing I do, is keyword research.
Mhm.
So I started to do, keyword research around 50 over 50, and the only thing that came up was how to date over 50, how to fill out a dating profile, what to wear, what not to wear, what to eat, what not to eat, ridiculous diets,
And I just think have
fear
that.
and fear. Everything else was
Yeah.
fear, and I was like, "Well, screw this."
Yeah. But I mean, that's not the conversation we're having, right?
No, not at
I mean, this is
all, not
totally
at
not the conversation
all.
we're having.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, we've already got 55 people up on the website, and there are more coming, and
Mhm.
not one of those things have come up once. I've had interviews, I've had individual conversations, and I have questionnaires that have been filled out, and many of these women I know for years.
Right.
Not once has any of that. We have not talked cooking, diets, clothes, dating, none of it.
No, but that is sort of the media, that
Yeah,
is the patriarchy that still tries to put us into those roles that are beyond.
absolutely.
I mean, the good news is we don't fulfill those roles anymore, right? So that's sort of the good news. But the bad news is that there's still this
Uh,
being stuck in those conversations.
Okay, so this is
Uh,
gonna roll
yeah,
us into disruption, but what I
that's
wanna start this conversation with is
mm,
that but with the 55 of us so far, we
yeah.
have a collective outreach of over 500,000 people,
Wow.
and you know what? The path is clear for us to take over
Mm.
this
Yep,
conversation, and that's my
absolutely.
goal.
Yep,
That's my goal.
yep. Look
So
forward to
let's
it.
yeah.
Right, so
Counting
yeah,
on you.
let's disrupt the
I'm
hell out
counting
of
on
this,
you to kick
right?
up
Yeah,
some shit.
yeah, yeah.
All right, let's talk disruption. What was it like for you before 50 and after 50?
Um, I think disruption before 50 was more haphazard. It was
Mhm.
not guided. Um, it was energy driven and physically driven, right? It was jumping out of planes. It was, doing triathlons. It was climbing up on mountains. It was,
Proving.
yeah, yeah, definitely. It was very, it was sort of the sassy, daredevil stuff, at
Mhm.
least in my case. Um, disruption now, if we can move to the now,
Yeah.
um, disruption now is much more about how can I affect change in a positive and in a loving and in a caring way. And yes, sometimes we need to bulldozer over certain things. I'm still all about that if it needs to, if it serves a purpose. But it's just a very different conversation, right?
Yeah.
It is a conversation of, and it's very very funny, Donna, when I ask people, what is your unique selling proposition, or what makes you different from any other, accountant or broker or whatever you are, right? They're like, and then they come like with the experience and the 10 years of
Mhm.
doing this and doing it. I'm like, snooze fest. And
Yeah.
when I asked them, it's like, what are you out to change in your
Yes.
industry? What pisses you off in your niche, in your area of expertise? I can't shut them up anymore, right? Then then I have, like, and I'm like, okay, this is your disruptor. This is your unique selling proposition.
Yes.
And so being clear on your disruptor, or, change agent, whatever you want to call it, is what is that is the conversation ought to be having when we talk about how we want to show up and what we want to change.
That's amazing, and that's exactly what we need to be talking about because that's what gets heard. The other
Yeah.
stuff doesn't get heard. It just goes right into that drone that's like,
Mhm. Yep.
covering the entire internet, this big, like,
Yep.
bzz,
Yep.
this big cloud of noise. And it's amazing. One of my favorite things when I work with clients, particularly around helping them find their audience, because they don't know. Everyone's like, I don't know who my audience is. My
Mm.
audience is women. Okay, no.
Yeah.
When they have that moment where they realize that they actually do have a voice,
Mhm. Yeah. That's
and
so
that's
powerful, and I see that with video all the time, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
an amazing moment to witness and to see when that aha moment happens, right? Yeah.
yeah. I get chills just thinking about it
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
when you can actually help somebody connect with that, and then they realize like what it is that makes them special because they've lived 30, 40, 50, 60 years without knowing that. I mean,
Mhm.
we've got women in this group that are all the way up to age 85. There was one day where I was feeling frustrated with myself, and I was like, am I ever going to stop like changing everything in my business? And then
Welcome to the club,
and
right? Yeah.
and then I spoke to one of the other real 50 over 50 women, and she was 75 years old and, like, thrilled to be doing the same thing, and she totally re-inspired me
Mhm.
because I was just falling into a rut, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm 59 and she's 75 and she's
Mm.
still doing it." So, like, what else could I do? What could I do now? What could I do between now and then? What could I do when I'm 80? And, it's just, like, once you have that spark, it just changes the direction of everything.
Yes. Yes, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I promised my business partner, no changes this year. We're just gonna, like, do a better job of selling what we it's not even, yeah, right. We're not even in the hopper yet. They've already created 2 new programs, and yeah, yeah.
Did he believe you?
He knows me well enough at this point to not believe me. He's also
Okay.
thankfully a very well functioning millennial, so he has the energy to go and do whatever, whatever I cook up next. So
Oh my goodness, that's what I need. 'Cause I keep cooking things up, but I don't have the energy that I had.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it does. I'm like, I have to make sure it doesn't hold me back, right? And
Yeah.
I'm just learning that perfect is just that's a wonderful concept, especially as a Swiss person.
Mhm.
But it's just a concept, right? At this point, it's just like let's make it work, let's make it
Mhm.
helpful, let's make it as good as it can be, but not
Mhm.
perfect. Far from
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. I'm working on the, living by the theory of you don't have to burn everything down.
I love it. Yeah, just a few things, yeah, here and there. That's brilliant. Yeah, I love that.
Just the top layer, a little brulee.
A little sizzle on top, yeah. Relay, there we go, perfect. You see, we got to
Okay.
a cooking analogy after all.
Yeah, but it's fancy dessert.
Yeah,
It's not beef
doesn't
stew or
really,
anything.
yeah, exactly.
Alright,
Exactly.
so let's transition this into 27 years of business, like,
Mm.
what have you learned?
Oh my god,
Boil it down.
where will I start? There's one thing I learned really before I even started my business. I was staffed the only time in my life I was staffed somewhere for 2 years at a big commercial production house. And the one thing I learned, and that's something that I've kept up and true in my business throughout the 27 years, and has served me really well. Be really careful with your ongoing expenses, and don't shy away from one-time expenses. One-time expenses are manageable. What's eating you up and what's killing you, and what I saw this business go, it eventually went under. Overhead kills you. And to this day, I keep, I mean, I try to not, but the one thing I keep a really tight iron fist on is my recurring expenses.
Yeah.
So if somebody says it's $10,000 to do this one thing and it's a one-time affair, I will absolutely entertain that. If somebody says it's $500 every month for the rest of your life, I'll be like, don't know.
Yeah.
So
But
it's just, yeah, being
even
careful.
the little things, even all the little apps, like once you
Yep,
sign up and you try this and you try this and you try this. I had, this was years ago in my business, I had a big program and I was trying all of these different tools. And I didn't realize the scope creep with those tools. And I sat down and did my accounting. I was spending like over $1,000 a month just on little, like, $25 a month tools that I wasn't using most of
yep,
them.
yep,
So I learned my lesson then, and
yep.
I keep a tight leash on those things.
Mhm.
And, yeah, I mean, that if you don't have the money, you don't have a business, right?
Yep, exactly. And I mean, and then there's so much more. I mean, and I think what I really also learned, and that's maybe one of the things that changed above 50. Um, if it doesn't feel right when I'm talking with a client, even if they're ready to buy, I will not hire them as as clients. I will not. Yeah. So I've gotten, especially film production. I mean, I'm sure every industry has their abusive situations and clients, but I just don't want to, what I call, I'm not working with asshole clients anymore. And it served me really, really well, because the people that I have now in my membership, and that's also a lesson I had to learn, memberships, be careful who you let in. It is nearly impossible to let people go out of a membership if, unless they want to go. I actually dissolved the membership just to get rid of two people I needed to get rid of. They weren't even bad people, they were just completely wrong people
Mhm.
for that group, and they just wouldn't quit. So I dissolved it and
Yeah.
renamed it and opened it up again. And it was a lot of extra work, but in the end, that's what I needed to do.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the kind of stuff you only learn by doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
only learn by doing. I'm starting up a new membership now, and, before I even opened the doors, I turned 2 people away.
Yep. Yep.
There's
And
one.
I'm very careful too. I have two memberships going right now, and I'm very careful. One membership is not that bad; it's just a
Mhm.
LinkedIn pod. But the other one is an actual like group thing, and we meet regularly. And it's sort of a be inspired by the others kind of thing.
Yes, yes.
And you've got to be really careful who you let in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I don't remember who said it. I think it might be Jim Rohn. You are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so true, and it comes back over and over and over again.
Mhm.
Um, so, yeah, be very selective is really good advice. Um, where does the Queenager show up in 27 years of business?
Where does the Queenager show up? I mean, it definitely shows up for me personally in allowing myself to live out the entertainer in me in my video creation. So
Mhm,
I'm really letting myself, I don't want to say I'm letting my hair down all the way, but I'm a lot less concerned about, this whole conversation about giving yourself permission to shine, giving yourself permission to show up and be heard and be seen. And that's also something that I was raised to. You're the pleasant female in the background, not even woman, it's female. Conscious word choice here. And I think that for me is sort of the fun part that I'm now having as a queenager, is like, here I am, hear me roar, and I will not shut up. And I think that is sort of that, and that is also what I work with my clients. So in a way, it's great for me to kind of model that for them to see, and also to do it in a way that serves my business, right? It's not just showing up in the wife beater without makeup and
mhm,
disheveled in bed in the morning. I mean, I would never do that. I will show up the way I will meet my clients,
mhm.
but it's in the tone, it's in the delivery, it's in the irreverence of maybe the topics I choose to talk about and how I choose to talk about them.
And I also think that, so many people feel that they need to be a different person online, which is the
Yeah.
worst thing that you could
The
possibly.
worst thing, people smell inauthenticity
Yeah,
from a mile against the wind.
yeah.
And I think, and this is, I have a whole video series called Conversations About Shit That Matters, that deals with those topics. And it's really, a lot of people get professionalism and authenticity and, letting it all hang out, all confused. So you want to have sort of, I always say the biggest compliment is if somebody gets on a Zoom call with you and says, "Oh my God, you're just like you are in your videos." That's what I want, right? So I'm going to be a professional when I show up with my clients. I'm going to be Nina, obviously, because they're going to spend a lot of time with me, and I'm not going to be able to fake it for any duration. Um, but I also want to make sure that it is within the context of us having a professional relationship.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
And then I would say in the beginning, when you're not quite, if you don't have your sea legs about personal stuff and social media yet, it's like, pick a couple of things to talk about and then stick to those
Yeah.
until you sort of suss it out. So it can be really easy stuff like, I split my time between Switzerland and New York. I have a dog. I love to do artwork, and it's just a couple of topics, and I'll stick with those, and then you can expand from there, as you feel more comfortable, or you test the waters on seeing
Yes.
what people respond to and what they don't.
Well, that's the other side of it too, is people also sense when you're sharing something you're not comfortable sharing, and that's a big trust eroder right there.
Yep, absolutely.
So, it's share what you're comfortable sharing, give people a glimmer into who you really are.
Yep.
And, the trust starts to build, and, it's so important and it's so simple.
It is so simple, right? But yet for a lot of people, it is very scary, and I kind of
Mm,
get it. I get it.
mhm.
But I would say if you don't control the conversation controls you.
Yes,
So I think
yes.
it's really important that we actually do speak about what we want to speak about or should speak about, because if we don't, then the conversation is about things that we don't want the conversation to be about. Like,
Mhm.
my conversation is never about what my family status is. My conversation is never about health. My conversation is never about any of those things, because I have plenty of other things to talk about. So that keeps people busy if
Mhm.
you were to be nosy or wanted to know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never talked about health until I had a health issue, and
Mhm.
I talked about it, and, it's not all I talk about for sure, but it's definitely become part of my conversation because it's become part of my life, and I think it's not just me, it's other people that are
I
Or
think if you can frame the conversation such that it becomes helpful,
mhm,
I think it's a great conversation to have. And I just had an article the other day, or a post I read. This young man, he has 75,000 followers on LinkedIn. He's sort of the first big video guy on LinkedIn. And he posted an article about having ADHD. And I was like, oof, TMI, way too much information. But he framed it so brilliantly, and he knew his audience. He knew his audience was mostly creatives who
mhm,
also struggle with ADHD, something I didn't know.
yeah,
And it was the right conversation with the right people about the right topic, despite the fact that it was deeply personal. But he framed it correctly. He asked the right questions at the end of the post to start a really productive
mhm,
conversation around the topic. And I use him as an example now all the time because it was just done brilliantly, and he was at the end of it, right? It wasn't like
mhm,
I'm in the messy middle and I don't know what to do.
mhm,
Oh my god, oh my god. It
mhm,
was like, this is how it happen occurs to me. These are the checks and balances I have in place. This is what I do. So the ADHD for me is a creative tool and not something that holds me back.
yes, yes,
What do you do? And then now it's a constructive
yes,
conversation, right?
yes. It's actually a healing
No,
conversation.
and a
Yeah,
helpful conversation, and a
yes,
conversation that people can he created a safe space. And you should have seen the comments on that article. It was
yeah,
phenomenal. I
yeah,
mean, it not no haters, no
yeah.
stupid comments, just really constructive, like, oh my god, I have this problem too, this is what I do, or I didn't know, blah blah blah. It was really fantastic.
Yeah, I have AFib, and I actually, was trained to be a patient advocate. And one of the things that I'm going to be doing in the future is rolling that into my conversation and
Mhm.
speaking to the right audiences. And now that AI has come out, there's a whole area of AI around healthcare, particularly cardiology.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to learn more about that too, so I could speak to that as
Mhm.
well.
Yep.
It's
Using your, your weak spots and make them your strengths, make them your
yeah,
superpower. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So now one of the things that you have in your offerings is you have a quiz.
Yes.
I love it. It's really well done. So many of them are not well done. But this one you can tell that you put some experience and thought and,
Thank you.
care
Yes,
into.
we did. We
Yeah.
actually had a lot of fun doing it. Yeah.
And, so what is like when you what it is, it's a quiz to tell what kind of, uh, how you show up on video, what your personality is on
Mhm.
video.
Yeah.
And, what do you see in the people that take the quiz, like, once they understand what their personality is? How do you see a change in them?
I think it can be a dramatic shift actually, and it can be a very subtle shift. And I always love to tell the story of my client Matt Stone, who came to me before I had the quiz, and he wanted to share a lot of case studies. So we made him write out these little stories and tell the stories. And he was really good on camera. I mean, total natural. Had done some camera work, in the previous life, college, whatever. And those videos were pulling teeth. They were terrible. And I could not figure out for the life of me what was going on. And while he was working with us, my business partner and I, we created the quiz. So, of course, naturally, our clients are our first, row of guinea pigs that go through the quiz. So Matt takes the quiz, and we look at the results and we're like, holy crap, the man has not an ounce of storyteller in him, not a iota. He was 100% an educator. And that's when the light bulb went off for me. A, how helpful the quiz really was, and it was just not just a
Mhm,
nice to have lead magnet, it was actually a helpful tool. And then B was like, apologize to Matt to make him something he wasn't. And then C, we're like, okay, let's reframe these case studies not as stories, but as what was the learning, and
mhm,
make them more lessons than stories. And boom, we had an amazing series of videos. He got a huge Pentagon contract not 2 weeks after he put the whole series out over the course of 2 weeks. And it was like, wow, that is the power of speaking. We had talked about that authenticity, right?
mhm,
When once you know what your personality is, and again, this is not a scientific quiz. It is something that we just created from our experience, but it's a really nice to know that, hey, I'm a storyteller. I need to be careful that I don't go from topic A to B to C to go a little bit back to A, maybe a little bit of C, and then lose my way all the way to Z. That is the problem with a storyteller, right? And with an educator, it was so the different there's motivator, educator, storyteller, and entertainer. If you have any of these or whichever's you do have, allow yourself to speak into that, and you'll your videos will just come out that much better in a if I want to even say visceral way, right?
Mhm.
It's like once I knew I was also part entertainer and I embraced that part of me, um, my engagement on LinkedIn shot up, despite the fact that we went from 5 times a week posting to only 3 times a week posting.
Mhm.
I can see I can see in the graphics of the little app, one more app to pay for that I have that integrates with LinkedIn. I can see where I started posting, like the conversations about shit that matters.
Mhm.
Really makes a difference. So it's this knowing who you are and how you impart information in the most powerful way that serves you and your personality.
Mm. Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. I mean, I was the storyteller, which it didn't surprise me, but it's, what you just said, I'm gonna start with A and B and C and then go to Z and back to A. I have to, like I have to keep myself from doing that.
Right, and there's techniques to do that, and there's places where, and this is what a beauty is, right? If I know you're a storyteller, I'm going to suggest you're going to do a live broadcast, haha, right? So because that allows you that longer format,
Yeah.
and then you give it to an editor, they can cut out the little sound bites and snippets, so you do get to shorter form
Mhm.
content, but set yourself up for success.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, you're showing up as you.
Yeah.
So, you're not trying to push something that you're not,
Yep.
and that's to me, like, I've been involved in this online world since 2009,
Mhm.
and, that's the biggest offense, is everyone's trying to be somebody they're not,
Yep. Yep.
and
And you can't keep it up. I always say to people, it's too exhausting to be somebody else.
yeah, and the thing is everybody knows. Even if they don't, like, know it up here, they feel it
They
here,
feel it. Yeah. Yeah. For
and
sure.
they feel it before they know it, and, it's just not serving you well. And
Yeah.
that's also when you listen to people that you shouldn't be listening to and buying things you don't need,
Yep.
because you're not sure
Right.
of yourself.
That's the courses that end up in the, I've heard everything from the course graveyard. I always say the courses end up on the island with those lost socks. I think they kind of all mingle. They commingle.
Yeah, I call it digital dust.
There we go. Yep. That's a good one.
I mean, and those are the ones you spend the most money on, right? Those are the things that are $5,000 or
Yeah.
$10,000.
Yeah.
They're never the ones that are $100.
No, and and I create my courses and my programs with that very much in mind. So there's
Yes.
always, with us, there's always like a one-on-one element in there. There's
Yes.
always an element in there to make sure that these programs don't go onto the digital dust or island of lost socks,
Yeah.
which I'll have to visit one day because there's quite a few pairs that I need to rematch.
And you see, that's just it. You don't have to burn it all down. You just need to shake out the socks.
Exactly. There you go.
Okay, so we are at 30 minutes, but before we end, I would like, for you to share about Tigger, sorry.
Tigger. Tigger owns me. That's number one. I'm not his owner. He's my owner. Um, and he's a Dachshund Yorkshire Terrier mix who thinks he's a Great Dane. And he's just, it's sort of having the boyfriend that does makes no demands. It's
Mhm.
perfect. He snores only on occasion, and if he does, I can nudge him and he stops. And got a small dog very much on purpose. So Tigger and I have 12 round trips to Europe under our belt.
Mhm.
So he comes in the plane with me, And it's just a wonderful way. I mean, I don't know what I would have done during the pandemic without him, right? There was just having it's not just having a soul with you or a breathing thing with you. A guinea pig would solve that problem too. But it's the routine that comes with owning a dog.
Yeah.
A dog gets you out of the house. Now that I'm gone so much, I mean, I still have my really good New York friends, but sort of the just the people I hang out with casually, they're all my dog people
Mhm,
because they're neighborhood bound. We all have the same problem of needing to walk
mhm.
a dog several times a day, and there's also sort of this posse of like, I'm going away for 2 days. Can you take my dog? I take it. We hand off our dogs, and
That's how
they
I raised my kid.
yep. And it just creates this, and that's where Americans are also so brilliant. Just this sort of casual but yet very tight knit group, and you can float in and out of it without having to be best friends,
Mhm.
but still being friends close enough that you do trust other people with your most prized possession, which is well, not that a family member is a possession. So yeah. So and Tigger in a former life was a cat, which is probably why I gave him a cat name unknowingly.
So, how can people find you?
So, I mean, the best way I always say is on LinkedIn, because I do as I preach or I do as I teach.
Mhm,
So, I'm super active on LinkedIn. You can see us in action, and that is what we teach our people. So, we teach on one hand the video part, but we also teach the how to be consistent on LinkedIn and how to sort of survive the whole LinkedIn, organic outreach to attract ideal clients.
mhm.
And so that's one great way to sort of do a safe stalking from the distance. And if you want to do the quiz, or if you're interested in just more, what we do is the website clockwiseproductions.com. We have on the landing page right now, we have a wonderful little quiz, not quiz, sorry, a white paper you can download, which is called "The 5 Videos Every Service-Based Entrepreneur Must Have and How to Write Them." And it's a really cool sort of, if you're not sold on creating video all the time on social media, but you want to have those, 5 stellar videos that live on your website and sort of tell the story of you. We have a little, help to see what they are and how to go about writing them.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you. Thank you, thank you for being part of this
Of
and for
course. Thank you
joining in
for inviting me.
today.
Yes.
And we've got a lot more coming. Join us every Wednesday at noon Eastern Time, right here on LinkedIn or on Facebook. And pretty soon we're going to be doing some other interesting things too. So make sure that you're signed up for my list at crovatamediagroup.com, where I'll be sharing more information. And visit the real 50 over 50.com website to learn more about Nina and all of the other women that we have showcased there. So far, we're at 55, but we're going to keep going.
Awesome. The more the merrier.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm going for 200. That's my goal.
Very good.
Thank you, Nina, and thank you, everybody, and we will see you soon.
See you soon.